The rise and fall of Benito Mussolini remains one of the most dramatic political stories of the 20th century. Once celebrated as the man who would restore Italy's strength and national pride, Mussolini eventually became a symbol of failed ambition, authoritarian excess, and catastrophic miscalculation. His journey from revolutionary journalist to fascist dictator and ultimately to captured fugitive executed by his own countrymen illustrates how quickly power built on fear and spectacle can collapse. Mussolini rose to prominence in the aftermath of World War I when Italy was gripped by economic hardship, political instability, and widespread social unrest. Many Italians felt betrayed by the post-war settlement, believing their country had not received the territorial rewards it deserved. Strikes paralyzed industries, unemployment soared, and clashes between socialist groups and nationalist factions became common. In this atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, Mussolini positioned himself as a decisive leader who could restore order and national pride. In 1919, he founded the fascist movement, promoting a vision of strong centralized authority, militarism, and aggressive nationalism. His followers, known as the Black Shirts, used intimidation and violence against political opponents, particularly socialists. Rather than weakening his movement, these tactics projected strength. To many Italians exhausted by chaos, Mussolini appeared to be a solution. In 1922, Mussolini orchestrated the March on Rome, a mass demonstration designed to pressure the government. Faced with the threat of civil conflict, King Victor Emmanuel III appointed Mussolini as prime minister. It was a turning point in Italian history. Once in office, Mussolini gradually dismantled democratic institutions. Opposition parties were outlawed, censorship tightened, and critics silenced. By the mid-1920s, Italy had become a fascist dictatorship, and Mussolini adopted the title Al Duce, presenting himself as the embodiment of the nation. Throughout the 1920s and early 1930s, Mussolini cultivated an image of strength and efficiency. Massive public works projects and propaganda campaigns reinforced the perception that Italy was rising again. Internationally, he sought to expand Italian influence, invading Ethiopia in 1935 in a brutal campaign meant to showcase imperial ambition. For a time, Mussolini seemed to stand confidently among Europe's most powerful leaders. However, his alliance with Adolf Hitler would ultimately prove disastrous. Although Mussolini had initially been cautious about Nazi Germany, he increasingly aligned Italy with Hitler's regime. The two leaders formalized their cooperation in the Pact of Steel in 1939. When World War II erupted, Mussolini hesitated, aware that Italy's military was unprepared. Yet in 1940, as Germany achieved rapid victories across Europe, he declared war, hoping to secure territorial gains and glory. Instead, Italy faced repeated military failures. Campaigns in Greece and North Africa faltered, forcing Germany to intervene. Italy's economy strained under the weight of war, and Allied bombing campaigns devastated cities. The myth of Mussolini's invincibility began to crumble. What had once been projected as strength increasingly appeared as recklessness. By 1943, Italy's situation had become untenable. Allied forces invaded Sicily, and public support for the regime deteriorated rapidly. In a dramatic reversal, members of the Fascist Grand Council voted against Mussolini. King Victor Emmanuel III, who had once empowered him, ordered his arrest. After more than 2 decades in power, Mussolini was removed without resistance from the system he had built. Though German forces later rescued him and installed him as head of a puppet regime in northern Italy, his authority was hollow. As Axis defeat became inevitable in 1945, Mussolini attempted to flee to Switzerland. He was captured by Italian partisans and executed shortly thereafter. His body was displayed publicly in Milan, a stark and humiliating end for a man who had once commanded mass rallies and demanded absolute loyalty. Mussolini's downfall demonstrates the fragility of authoritarian power. His regime relied heavily on propaganda, spectacle, and intimidation. As long as victories and stability reinforced the illusion of control, his authority seemed secure. But once military failures exposed weakness, the support that had sustained him evaporated with surprising speed. His story is not merely one of dictatorship and war. It is also a cautionary tale about ambition unrestrained by accountability. Mussolini sought to resurrect a new Roman empire, yet his decisions led Italy into devastation and division. The very mechanisms he used to consolidate power, fear, suppression, and centralized control offered no protection when public confidence collapsed. The arc of Mussolini's life moves from revolutionary idealism to authoritarian dominance and finally to violent rejection. It reminds us that political authority rooted in coercion rather than consent can appear formidable, yet remain deeply unstable. In the end, the man who once believed himself indispensable to Italy discovered how swiftly a nation can turn on its leader when promises give way to failure. Mussolini's life is a stark reminder that power built on fear, propaganda, and unchecked ambition is never as permanent as it appears. For years, he stood on balconies above roaring crowds, convinced he was shaping destiny itself. Yet, in the end, the same nation he claimed to embody rejected him completely. His story forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Authority without accountability can rise quickly, but it can fall even faster. History does not just remember leaders for their victories. It remembers them for the consequences of their decisions. If you want more deep dives into the rise and fall of history as most powerful figures, the ambitions into the rise and fall of history as most powerful figures, the ambitions, the mistakes and the moments that changed everything, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Because history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding power, leadership, and the choices that shape our world today. And the next story might surprise you even more.